Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson talking about preseason week 3, the dress rehearsal week. We're going to be going through all of the significant news from the week, a lot of injury-related news. But before we dive in, just want to talk about our friends over at Draft or playdraft.com. That's where you can find this beautiful new app. It's Draft in the App Store or playdraft.com. Get there, download it, and play. You can win real money in what they call a best ball league. You draft your team, you set it and forget it. Just leave it. Don't worry about injuries, waiver wire, trades. Don't forget about anything. They'll take your best players every single week. The drafts are easy. You can do a nice quick one that takes under an hour, or you can do a slow draft to take your time. And you have a very special offer today. If you use the promo code PFF with your first deposit, you will get a free $3 game. That's right. Promo code is PFF. You can win real money. They have $1 games, $3 games, $10 games, and games start every couple minutes. It's the type of thing, it's a little addicting, and it'll keep you latched on for the entire season. I'll have about 10 teams going this year because it is that easy, and there will be real money at stake. So be sure to check that out, playdraft.com or Draft in your app store. It is promo code PFF for a free $3 game. All right, Sam, let's talk about preseason week 3. The big stories, the injuries, right? This is supposed to be dress rehearsal week. Instead, it's how do we replace guys like Julian Edelman and Cameron Meredith and Spencer Ware? What'd you make of preseason week 3?
I think that's exactly why it is dress rehearsal week. The NFL, more than ever, seems to be about how healthy you can stay. And the teams that stay healthy throughout the season tend to be the teams that can contend at the end of it. And we've seen a few guys go down. So some significant starters, some significant players, contributors in their team gone down. I think none of them are deal breakers. I don't think anyone that we lost this weekend is going to be the death of that particular team over the season, but there are some pretty significant holes that need to be filled.
Well, let's go through the big ones. Let's start with Julian Edelman. It was Friday night, early in the game. The Patriots offense clicking on all cylinders against the Lions. Edelman is a part of that, and then blows out his ACL. I mean, in the offseason, the fact that they traded for Brandon Cooks, I think makes this a much easier pill to swallow for the Patriots. If they did not have Brandon Cooks, there would be a little scrambling going, but I think Cooks is a good fit for that offense. You've a guy like Chris Hogan, who not only emerged the other night, but last season was excellent. You have guys like Malcolm Mitchell, you have Danny Amendola, and you have all those running backs. And there's playmakers everywhere still in that pass offense for New England. Yeah,
Julian Edelman is just like Wes Welker in every possible way now. He's even lost the ACL the same way Wes Welker did. But the most Wes Welker-like aspect of Edelman is that he's the guy that Tom Brady leans on now. And he's the guy that he will feed for the big targets in the biggest games. And that's the thing he needs to patch up. But the Patriots are masters at moving on from one guy they lean on to somebody else. And nobody is better positioned now to be able to replace a guy like Edelman in terms of sharing his target volume amongst other guys, whether it's Chris Hogan, whether it's Danny Amendola, whether it's Mitchell, whether it's the tight ends,
Austin Carr,
the running backs.
Austin
Carr should absolutely now make this team and see some significant targets.
PFF's top graded wide receiver last year at Northwestern went undrafted and has shown well this preseason.
Absolutely. So he should definitely be a lock to make this team now. But, a lot of people were saying that this is, a real body blow in the Patriots to be scouring the waiver wire for receivers. I mean, they've got 4 Julian Edelman sitting on the roster already. They may not be as good and they may not be exactly the same kind of player, but you can replace what he's bringing with those guys.
It's not that easy to replace Edelman. Here's the difference between him and Welker. I think in the slot, they're very similar players. Edelman is a better player on the outside. Plays on the outside in 2 wide receiver sets. So I think it is a combination of a guy like Malcolm Mitchell playing on the outside with, say, Chris Hogan on the outside. And then Danny Amendola probably steals some of those slot snaps. We saw Chris Hogan in the slot. And, of course, don't forget about Brandon Cooks. He can also play outside or inside. So there is still plenty of talent.
Rex Burkhead, you can get some receiving play out of those guys from the backfield.
Yeah, we saw him against Houston taking advantage of his shiftiness out of the backfield. And, of course, James White, who was just very difficult to cover in the Super Bowl. And Rob Gronkowski's healthy. Dwayne Allen's there at tight end.
I think
there are a lot of playmakers.
The bottom line here is this probably isn't going to be the death knell of this Patriots offense.
Let me just say this. First off, I wanted to see this entire offense with all of these pieces in place just to see how it shook out. But in 2015, when Julian Edelman went down, it was a completely different Tom Brady.
It was.
For a few weeks. We're talking about a guy that was getting rid of the ball in about 2.2 seconds. It was the fastest release in the NFL. Because, like you said, there's that comfort factor, and he knows he's going to go to him, and Edelman creates separation quickly. Brady started throwing the ball an average of about 2.6 seconds instead of 2.2, and that's like night and day. Slow for him. He started throwing the ball downfield, low percentage passes. I'm not saying that's going to happen now. I'm just trying to say when Edelman went down in 2015, it was pretty significant. I think he has the pieces to fix it right now, just trying to show how good Edelman has been for that offense.
Yeah, I think they've added players that are on there now that weren't there back then that will mitigate that. It won't be the same problem it was before, where there was nobody that could step into that role and be that reliable chain-moving target that he had.
Right, I agree. If any team is equipped to handle something like that, it is the New England Patriots. The other couple big injuries, let's go to Spencer Ware. And the Kansas City Chiefs also happened. I believe it was Friday night. He goes down, and man, I've really enjoyed watching Spencer Ware through the years. He always felt like the guy that just needed to get more opportunities, needed to get more carries. I think he started to finally break out with Kansas City. Now we're looking at Kareem Hunt, their third-round rookie, speaking of top-graded players, at Toledo last year, top-graded PFF running back. A lot of love for Kareem Hunt around the NFL, looking good so far this preseason. Look, as good as Hunt is, you're still, especially with running back, you're still better off when you have that depth. So how does this Ware injury affect Kansas City?
Yeah, you're definitely better off with having more depth than not having more depth. But I wonder if West will get his job back at all, because Kareem Hunt is such a dangerous weapon, such a devastating player out of the backfield, such a complete running back. Like you said, it was our highest graded running back last season. Broke 76 tackles, I think. He racked up a huge amount of yardage. This is a guy that's been impressing in preseason, in training camp, impressive at the combine.
Senior Bowl.
Everything.
Yep.
I mean, he's a guy that was already going to be pushing for plenty of playing time. Now he's basically having the job handed to him because of an injury. I would suspect that he's not going to relinquish that, and we're going to see if Spencer Ware does make it back in good shape, it's going to be back as a backup.
For fantasy perspective, Hunt is the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going to get a lot of opportunities. They throw the ball to the backs quite a bit. He caught the ball very well at Toledo. The word that always kept coming to mind when watching him was just balance. The balance that he showed, bouncing off of tacklers and everything. And I love when you see a guy do it in the MAC, and you always wonder, can he do it in the NFL? But I know it's preseason, but Hunt has looked good bouncing off tacklers here in the NFL as well. I think he's going to be fine. So I think he's a fantasy play, and he's a real NFL play for the Chiefs. I think they'll be okay with Kareem Hunt taking the workload. 6 missed tackles on 18 rushes so far. 3.6 yards after contact per rush so far this preseason.
That's pretty good.
So, yeah, good start for Kareem Hunt. Expect him to take most of the workload in Kansas City. Let's go to the Chicago Bears. Cameron Meredith. He's another guy who, it was like a no-name Bears wide receiver core last year, right? But a guy like Meredith always seemed to impress. Has, pretty good athleticism, pretty good size. A gruesome injury, if you have not seen it. I don't suggest you go to look for it, but if you do come across it, don't be afraid to turn your head. It was a gruesome one for Meredith. How does Chicago handle this? Because they're not exactly loaded like, say, New England is with playmakers.
Yeah, no, this one sucks. Cameron Meredith, I think, he kind of broke out last year, but this was the year everyone was kind of predicting for him to take that next step forward and really become a top receiver for the Bears that have been looking for one for a while. And this injury was like the hit on Odell Beckham against the Browns the other night, except this was how it turns out most of the time. When that leg is planted and a guy comes in, sort of tackles you at the knee, the leg just can't deal with that, and it buckled and cost him his ACL and some other damage as well. What this does is really opened the door for one last shot at seeing what Kevin White has in the NFL. Because, what was he, the 7th overall draft pick, the same year as Amari Cooper. Those guys were seen as kind of 1A by a lot of people. A lot of people had Kevin White as the better of those two receivers, or at least the more talented of the two.
And almost everyone had him above, say, Devontae Parker, who we just picked. If you guys are listening to the awards show, we talked about Devontae Parker as a potential breakout player.
We were, I think, two of the few that didn't have them in that order. I think you and I both had Parker above Kevin White that year.
Yeah.
But the point is, a lot of people had him right up there, and with Amari Cooper, who's now seen as one of the best young wide receivers in the game. Kevin White has been completely anonymous. Injuries have kept him off the field a lot of the time for Chicago and limited when he's been on the field. But even now in preseason, he's supposedly fully healthy now. We should be seeing the real Kevin White. And, we're seeing him out there, but we're not seeing him dominate. We're not seeing him make plays. He was out there, I think, for 40-something snaps this week, saw 3 targets, caught 2 of them for 30 yards. But 3 targets is not enough for a guy that now needs to be their number one receiver, effectively. You need to be getting this guy, 10 looks over the course of a game. And if you're not getting him those looks because he's not open, that's a major problem.
Yeah, I don't know if in my head, it's like, all right, just feed him the ball. He's supposed to be that guy. But like you're saying, you can't just throw to him just because his name's Kevin White and you hope that he becomes good. Depth wise, I don't know what they're going to do if Kevin White doesn't step up. Kendall Wright is a guy they bring in who I think he's always just been, a solid. I
think he's good when healthy, but he's a big injury question mark himself. If you can keep him in the slot,
he's also a good complement to a receiving core that has other. Really
I think he's targets. A slot. I think he's really good in the slot. I think he's a really good slot receiver, but you need 2 capable starters outside of him, and you need to keep him on the field. So between those 2 caveats, that's a pretty big but on Kendall Wright.
Yeah, guys like Marcus Wheaton, Victor Cruz. Victor Cruz doesn't look like the same player that he was with the Giants. So it's going to be rough, especially if Mitch Trubisky does take over sooner rather than later. Having guys to throw to, it's going to be an issue because we saw that with Barkley last year. We saw that with Bears quarterbacks last year. They didn't have the weapons.
The one thing I would say about Kevin White, though, is that you can get him a degree of manufactured targets that just makes sense. Like, even if he's not getting open on most of the route tree, he basically only ran 2 routes at West Virginia. So if you throw him nothing but go routes and bubble screens, you can still get him 5 targets a game. You know what I mean?
At least get something out of him.
Yeah, there's, even if he, I don't know, what exactly the problem is with Kevin White, but if you're taking the situation of he's not getting open on most of these routes, just throw him the stuff that he was dominating in college on. Throw him the bubble screens, throw him the deep routes that he can at least challenge for athletically, and figure out the rest later. You need, if even if he isn't a complete receiver at this point, you just need him to be effective in a certain area.
Yeah, and the thing I liked about him at West Virginia, he at least flashed the ability to go up and get it in traffic, and he flashed some deep speed and. I think it's in there. Maybe it is a matter of just feeding him and giving him reps because, he's been banged up so much throughout his career. So all eyes on Kevin White, at least my eyes will be on, especially going into week 4 to see if they do give him a chance to find a rhythm before the season starts. So those are some of the big injuries that we saw in week 3. News that just broke before we came on the air, too. Reggie Ragland, Buffalo Bills, they trade him to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 4th-round pick in 2019.
Yeah.
What year is it right now? We're in 2017. All right, so Ragland goes to the Chiefs for a 4th-round pick. It depends on your perspective here with Reggie Ragland. He was, I think, considered a borderline 1st-round pick. He goes in the 2nd round in 2016. I don't mind the Bills getting rid of him because they were talking about him not even necessarily making the team because Sean McDermott, new head coach, is there. It is a completely new system. I don't think you could find 2 systems that are different from Rex Ryan's defensive system to Sean McDermott's defensive system. You're going from a man-heavy scheme, blitzing like crazy Rex Ryan system to more of a softer zone. I hate using the word soft, but more of a zone-heavy type of system. Reggie Ragland's more of that like hammer, 3-4 classic Alabama linebacker. So I kind of like I like the trade for both teams. I think Kansas City wants that complement to Derek Johnson in the middle.
Yes.
And Buffalo had to get rid of Ragland because he wasn't a great fit.
It's a great move for Kansas City. They wanted that inside linebacker to replace Derek Johnson, or not to replace him, to complement him and then potentially replace him down the line when Derek Johnson retires, because he's getting on at this point.
Getting old.
So for them, I think it makes perfect sense, and they didn't give him much to do it. For Buffalo, it kind of makes sense in that they've got something back for a guy that really didn't fit that system, and they're probably going to move on from sooner rather than later. Even if he made the team this year, it's not a long-term fit. They're going to move on from him at some point. So I guess it makes sense for them to get something back. The fact that how little they've got back is a little bit disappointing, I guess, if you're a Bills fan. A fourth-round pick in 2019 is the equivalent of a couple of cartons of toner or something. It's basically as low as you're going to get.
This whole concept fascinates me because with quarterbacks, it's like the complete opposite. A guy goes in the fourth round, throws 6 passes,
and now he's a second rounder.
And then he's a second rounder. This linebacker just 2 years ago was valued as a second-round pick. Now, granted, it just takes one team, right? So in theory, maybe the whole league thought he was a fourth-round pick.
Plus, he's had an injury since then, I guess.
And he's had an injury since then. That's all fair. But as recently as a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, he was valued as a second-round pick by at least one NFL team. And that's most NFL teams had him there.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's a great deal for Kansas City.
Right.
You've got a linebacker who fits your scheme and has talent. This guy is still a very good player.
I kept mocking him to Kansas City in the first round that year.
So for Buffalo, it's a case of it's a buyer's market. You know they want rid of him. They're probably not even going to keep him, at which point you're not offering big-time picks to get him.
Right.
So it's just one more piece of evidence of this rebuild job in Buffalo. And if I needed a quarterback now, I know I've said this before, and I'm right on this Tyrod Taylor bandwagon, but that they've blown that entire roster up. Tyrod Taylor is the only piece of it left. They're not going to keep him. Pick up the phone. Denver, pick up the phone.
Even a Reggie Ragland discussion
can go to Tyrod Taylor. That's how I do this.
7 straight podcasts. Let's mark it down on the wall here. 7 straight for Tyrod.
But even just look at the playing time for Reggie Ragland. 23 snaps in their first preseason game, 15 the second, 3 in the third. I mean, the writing was on the wall there.
One more point of perspective. McDermott's coming from Carolina, where his middle linebacker was Luke Kuechly.
Yeah.
And you cannot draw up a more perfect linebacker pretty much to do anything, but especially for that scheme where you have to play cover 2 and run the middle of the seam. You have to have some instincts in coverage, have some range. Ragland is more of that classic downhill type of linebacker that you don't always trust in man coverage when you need to, or to have great range.
Yeah, I mean, you also couldn't really draw up too much more different linebackers. If you want to encapsulate exactly why Ragland isn't a great fit for that system, just compare him to Luke Kuechly, in terms of what they do well and how they move, and say, this is why this guy isn't a fit in your defense. You're looking for this guy, and instead you have this guy. It's not going to work.
The other Alabama linebacker, Reuben Foster, a lot closer to Luke Kuechly as far as athleticism goes. You're looking at a guy like Preston Brown sitting in the middle now with Ragland gone. He was already playing ahead of Ragland anyway. I still think there's work to do with that linebacker core. Ramon Umber up there, Lorenzo Alexander, who had that breakout year as far as rushing the passer goes, but still a linebacking core that I think that is going to need some work, much like the rest of the Buffalo roster.
Preston Brown is interesting, though, because, one, he just had a kind of I think he was in PFF's Team of the Week last week for his preseason. But he's also had some, he's graded really badly at times, but also has had runs where he's graded pretty well. You've seen a good player for an extended period of time. It just never stays there. It always goes back to some pretty ugly play.
That was like Zach Brown last year, too.
Yeah.
Over in Buffalo. That run defense completely, dude, some of the holes that teams were running through against Buffalo last year.
Oh, it's horrendous.
Just disastrous. So Buffalo losing more pieces, continuing to move and look toward the future. I think that'll do it as far as injuries and news go. What I want to do here, though, three weeks into the preseason, we have week 4 coming up, which is very much your end of the roster guys. Most of the starters are going to sit. Every year, though, there are some preseason breakout players, some superstars, in quotes, superstars of the preseason. And you can either say, it's just preseason, or you could say, okay, are these guys going to be a part of this team? Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to become stars this year, but at least earn time in a rotation, add some sort of value. So I want to go through a bunch of names, guys that are excelling in PFF grades. PFF grades you could find if you're our PFF elite customers. We love you guys, our elite customers. Sam, we're just giving stuff away left and right to these guys. We just started giving them our preseason 0 to 100 grades as part of our very private Facebook group. So if you guys are interested in that, it's all PFF Elite over at ProFootballFocus.com. These are the guys that are crushing it in our preseason PFF grades. Let's go player by player. Cappy.
Cappy.
Did I make that name up?
No, well, sort of. It's a nickname rather than a given name. I can't remember what his given name is, but
Cappy.
Frankly, I like the decision to go to Cappy.
Okay. He's a little edge rusher.
Yeah.
Little edge rusher for the Cardinals. Absolutely dominating so far this preseason. Is there room for Cappy in Arizona's front seven?
I think so. I mean, you can never have, it's that old adage, you can never have too many pass rushers. This guy has been killing the preseason. I mean, he's been consistently dominant every single game. 2 sacks, 4 hits, 8 quarterback hurries across 3 games. Also leads all edge defenders in 8 defensive stops, so it's not just all pass rush, though, frankly, his run defense hasn't been phenomenal. But if you want to keep the guy as a situational rusher, could you do better than somebody like that? Lower down your roster, a guy that you're not going to put out there starting. You don't expect him to be an every down player. You literally just need him to come in for 250 snaps over the course of the season and rush the passer. He looks like a guy that can do that.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You've got Chandler Jones starting on one side. You have Marcus Golden as the official starter on the other side. But when you talk about that depth and that pass rushing depth, he's competing with guys like Jarvis Jones. And if Jarvis Jones wasn't a former first-round pick, this would feel like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jarvis Jones has proven he's really not a very efficient pass rusher in the NFL. I think we have a feel for that so far. And you have a guy like Cappy breaking out, having a dominant preseason. I know it's against backups and all that fun stuff, but I think you keep him around, and I keep coming back to just how fun this Arizona defense is going to be and how versatile they're going to be. Guys like Hassan Reddick. I mean, Reddick should be rushing the passer a little bit too. They're trying to get him reps as a true inside linebacker. Keep Cappy around, and he is just another movable chess piece for that defense.
Well, especially now without Calais Campbell in the middle, I think you're going to need to scheme up pressure a little bit more than you did in the past, where you could rely on Campbell getting 50 quarterback hurries from the inside. Now you need to start bringing pressure from a few more places. And I don't think they're going to be good enough to just allow 2 edge rushers, even though they're good edge rushers, Marcus Golden and Chandler Jones. I think it'd be so much better than just, having those 2 guys as your edge guys every single down saying, you guys bring the pressure. Let's involve Hassan Reddick. Let's involve a guy like Cappy as a situational guy in, dime defense. You've got some edge rushers there. You've got some pass rushers there. Let's bring heat from a variety of different places. Do a bit more of what the Patriots do in terms of, generating that heat from a lot of different areas.
I like it. I think his performance has been eye-opening and eye-opening enough to make the roster and try to make use of him on game day. Another pass rusher that's kind of broken out this year, a guy that I liked a little bit coming out back in 2014 with Arkansas, Chris Smith of the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Smith's had a couple opportunities in his career, has not necessarily produced. It's a little different from Cappy, who hasn't really had that opportunity in the NFL, so to speak. So this feels like that debate of, do we, 3 years into his career, know what Chris Smith is as a pass rusher and kind of dismiss this preseason? Or do we look at the preseason and say, okay, maybe he clicked, maybe he figured it out? Look at Jerry Hughes' early career. Jerry Hughes went from very unproductive pass rusher to one of the league's best. Can Chris Smith be a part of this Cincinnati Bengals defensive line rotation?
So his thing is that the thing working against him is there's a lot now invested in that position in Cincinnati.
After years of no investment.
Yeah, exactly. They've now gone hard investing in those positions. They've got guys that they've put a lot more into than Chris Smith that are ahead of him on the depth chart. So it's going to be tricky for him to kind of overcome that and actually gain some playing time. That being said, as much as he's kind of disappointed as a pass rusher in the regular season, in preseason, throughout his entire career, he's gotten better pretty much every single season. And the last couple of years, he's actually been quite good. This year, he's been ridiculous. 2 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 7 quarterback hurries over his 72 snaps. So that's a ridiculous return for not an awful lot of snaps
just
rushing the passer.
53 pass rushes.
Yeah.
And 15 total hurries.
I think he's done about as well as you could expect a guy to do on limited snaps. I just think there's too much in front of him on that depth chart to get him to make a serious contribution this year.
So we're talking about guys like Carl Lawson, 4th round pick, Jordan Willis, 3rd round pick. Whereas a couple of years ago, man, the Bengals, we kept begging for them to invest in more edge rushers. And now there are a few names. Of course, Carlos Dunlap starting, Michael Johnson still lurking around there. So is he going to be a late cut? And he's helping another team that's looking at him? Or do you think they could squeeze him in?
I think it's possible he doesn't make this roster. I think it's a close run thing. It's interesting. Like I say, this preseason has been phenomenal for him, but it's a lot fewer snaps than a guy like Cappy. It's almost Cappy's played almost 3 times as many snaps as Chris Smith has this year, and perform the same kind of level over a much greater sample size. Plus, he doesn't have the fact that he's kind of failed already in the regular season, albeit on
people might lean on that a little bit.
Yeah, albeit on a really low number of snaps. His entire regular season career is like 300 snaps old, but he at least has some negative tape out there for people to shy away from, whereas Cappy really has just been this preseason phenomenon that we haven't really seen if he can get it done in the regular season. So that would kind of make teams more inclined to give him a shot as opposed to let's take another run at the guy that's already swung and missed.
Another name that has had a very good preseason, game ball winner from this past weekend in their preseason game against the Detroit Lions. It's New England Patriots. Adam Butler, coming out of undrafted free agent out of Vanderbilt. More of an interior player at Vanderbilt. He's built like an interior player. He's played all over for New England, a little bit on the edge, a little bit on the interior. We're talking about a New England front seven who, I made this point the other day. I mean, last year, they should not be winning the Super Bowl after losing Chandler Jones, after losing Jamie Collins out of that front seven. On paper, the front seven doesn't look great, but they still managed last year defensively, had an excellent defense. So on paper, it looks like this wide open front seven to make the team. Adam Butler's playing excellent football. Is there a path for him? Is he a no-brainer at this point because they seem to lack depth, or does the New England Patriots paper roster not matter that much, and Butler, because he was an undrafted free agent, might not have a shot?
Well, we talked about it a little bit before when we were mentioning Arizona. The way the Patriots scheme up pressure makes them a very interesting team to look at, because it's always going to look worse on paper than it actually performs, because these guys are essentially generating their pressure as much by the scheme as by just letting a guy go out and win one-on-one. So you've got a guy like, Rob Ninkovich on the outside who's just not winning any kind of one-on-one battles last year, but it doesn't matter because they're able to rush Dante Hightower from up the middle, or even rush him off the edge, but align him in the middle. Let him loop around offensive tackles and come on the blitz that way. And they're bringing heat from defensive backs and safeties and all this kind of stuff. So their edge rushers may not be generating a huge amount of pressure, but everybody's doing what they're asked to do, and the scheme is generating the kind of pressure they need. So you look at these guys and, a bunch of guys up that front that aren't necessarily bringing a huge amount of heat. But I don't know how much they care about that, because they know, the first start, they know they're capable of getting it from other avenues. And I think part of it is a deliberate scheme thing. They're not actually trying to get as much pressure out of these guys as other teams are.
They're all about hybrid type of players.
Yeah.
So you have guys like Shea McClellan, who by name is probably a linebacker. He's played linebacker. He's played edge throughout his career. He'll be doing a little bit of both, I think, in New England. Dante Hightower is one of the rare pure linebackers that actually could line up as an edge rusher for maybe 15 snaps of just, here, go beat this tackle and be productive. You really can't find true linebackers that can do that. Hightower has that ability. You have a guy like Trey Flowers that moves around the defensive front. But with Derek Rivers, their third-round pick, who is supposed to be this developmental pass rush prospect, he's out for the season now as well. You have Dietrich Wise, a fourth-round pick, who's impressed in camp, and we liked him quite a bit coming out as well. But even him, you can't necessarily rely on him. Butler's a different type. Like I said, more of a bigger body type, more like what they used with Dominique Easley, interior, a little bit of edge. I think he's got a shot. I think he's competing with guys like Lawrence Guy, who they brought in from Baltimore, guys like Woodrow Hamilton, Vincent Valentine, who's more of a run-stop type. So I think Butler has a shot. I think he just fits that mold of a guy that can do multiple things, and he always impressed when I saw him on tape, at least at Vanderbilt. So
yeah, I think he's been impressive, but he's got the same kind of issue as before, when I think there's a lot of bodies in front of him to leap on that depth chart the way there isn't with a guy like Cappy.
There are a lot of bodies. If anything, though, New England is willing to bring in undrafted guys, probably a little bit more than some other teams. Let's go to Green Bay and Christian Ringo. This was the guy who famously, he got drafted, and was it ESPN was like, hey, he's a long snapper. He's a good long snapper.
Long snapper Christian Ringo.
And we had our guy Mike Mountford. Mike Mountford, when he was studying defensive tackles that year, one of our PFF analysts, found he developed a little bit of a man crush on Christian Ringo. Very disruptive interior player. He's had a couple good preseasons now. And again, you're talking about a Green Bay defense that I think has been looking for disruptive players for a while. Mike Daniels is already one of the league's best. But beyond that, we talked about it on the NFC North preview. Can you expect Clay Matthews to create pressure off the edge? Is Nick Perry going to do enough off the edge? Are they going to get stuff from Kyler Fackrell? And then on the interior, 2016 first-round pick Kenny Clark. Is he going to break out? Is there room for Ringo amongst those interior guys just because Green Bay needs somebody to rush the passer?
Oh, I think there's absolutely room for him. In fact, when you showed me this list before, I almost wondered why we had Christian Ringo in it, because I thought he was such a sure thing to be that guy. And then I looked at the numbers, and he only actually played 77 snaps last year in the regular season. It felt like a lot more. It felt like they'd found this guy that became, a significant part of that defense, and a guy who was going to be that sub-package rusher and make a real impact.
Very PFF-y guy here.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing.
Just shouldn't be in the league and just crushed our system. It was our first year, 2014. Where he just crushed the system in the Sun Belt and all that stuff. You're supposed to write him off, and here he is producing.
And I think that's part of the deal, is that because, we were big fans of Christian Ringo, and he got some playing time and played relatively well when he got on there, you were like, okay, done deal. He's going to be that guy. But yeah, I think it's only a good thing for him that he's then come back and backed that up with a 2017 preseason where he's been one of the standouts. He's been good in every single game. He's generated pressure in every single game. And the pass rush has been the more impressive aspect of his game, which again perfectly fits that role that you're looking for. Again, a sub-package pass rusher, and particularly with guys like Kenny Clark there, who, if he does develop, is going to be the run-stuffing side of that.
Right.
He's not going to be that interior pass rush. It's just not his game. But if you can team him up with a guy like Christian Ringo, who can then come in on third downs and obvious pass rushing situations and be that interior rush presence, then you suddenly got a fantastic spot there. I think he can absolutely be that guy. I would imagine he is a pretty much lock to make this roster and hopefully earn some playing time.
Good history of overlooked, undersized interior rushers in Green Bay. Mike Daniels just setting the tone for a guy like Christian Ringo. I want to take a quick break to tell you guys about our friends over at DraftKings.com. Football season is almost here, right around the corner. No better way to get closer to the game than with DraftKings 1 week fantasy football. To celebrate, DraftKings is actually hosting a $100,000 contest that is totally free to enter. And if you actually put in the perfect lineup, you can win $1 billion. DraftKings offers so many interesting and fun ways to play. You can choose between public contests that have big cash prizes or private contests where you just grab a group of your friends and compete against them. There's also beginner and casual contests for my friend Sam over here, who's a beginner and casual fantasy player. Our hardcore fantasy players also love it. Plenty of money to win over at DraftKings.com. The best part is you are not dedicated to your team for the season. It's all about a new team every single week with no commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now. Use the promo code PFF to play in DraftKings' free Week 1 contest with $100,000 in total prizes. And if you draft that perfect lineup, you have a chance to win $1 billion. That's
how much?
Promo code $1 billion, Sam.
Billion with a B.
It's unbelievable. The promo code PFF to play for that $1 billion. That's all you need to do. The contest is totally free. Why not try? DraftKings is the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com for more details.
We're going to need a Dr. Evil soundbite if we're going to be talking about $1 billion like that.
I thought they said $1 million at first when they were talking to us about it. It was actually $1 billion.
Yeah, this is full-on Dr. Evil stuff.
Well, my team has entered, so I will buy you some things when I win. A couple more preseason superstars to run through. Jalen Hill, cornerback for the Baltimore Ravens, undrafted free agent. He's a big, long corner that's playing well. And look, cornerback play, especially in the preseason, if you're on the backup squad and you got some bad quarterbacks throwing the ball your way, it can make you look pretty good. But when you talk about how bad the Ravens cornerbacks have been in recent years and how they have to worry about Jimmy Smith's injury and Marlon Humphrey, their first-round pick, is a guy I think still probably needs a little bit of development time in the NFL. Can Jalen Hill be a guy that could help them immediately this season with his short little run he's had here in the preseason?
I can't believe you pulled out preseason superstars at cornerback and you didn't choose Kalen Reed. How could you do that to me?
Because we talked about him last week.
Yeah,
I gave you
any opportunity.
I did give you the opportunity to brag about Kalen Reed last week.
11 targets, a long completion of 8 yards. That's all I'm saying.
All right.
Okay,
Kalen
fine.
Reed,
I'll leave the Kalen Reed thing alone.
Awesome.
Let's go back to Jalen Hill. Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's definitely needed cornerback play. That's why they drafted a guy in the first round. Humphrey's issue, as much as needs some development, needs to get on the field as well. They haven't been 4 snaps, I think. Got himself straight back off again. They haven't been able to see what they have in him. So until that happens, it opens the door for a guy like Jalen Hill. Last season's rookie standout Tavon Young injured himself as well, so that's another door.
Top list.
Yeah, another door open for a guy like Hill to stand up and be counted, and he really has. He's been a heavily targeted guy. 20 passes sent his way so far this preseason. Allowed only 8 receptions. 2 interceptions, 2 passes defensed. When teams have targeted him, that's a passer rating of 13.1. Which is like a third of what you get if you just throw the ball into the dirt every single play.
Love the throw the ball into the dirt comparison. It always works.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is a team that's crying out for cornerback play. They haven't had great play at that position for a number of years. The one guy that did stand up to be counted earlier in his career is Young, who is on the shelf at the moment. So absolutely, the door is wide open.
I think Baltimore has potential in their secondary, which is a little scary. Brandon Carr, they signed this offseason. He could be a solid player. If Jimmy Smith is healthy, I think he's one of the league's best corners. Marlon Humphrey, again, if he's healthy, could develop. I think there might be a ways away, though, to actually get to where they need to be. You have a guy like Ladarius Webb now more of a backup role behind Eric Weddle and the newly signed Tony Jefferson. So it's an interesting secondary, to say the least. But I think there's a path for Hill to make the team and add some depth, add some, a long corner, which is what they need, is what they want. They want to be able to play that press man on the outside, and I think he's looked good so far.
Well, that safety group should be phenomenal. I mean,
should be. It's a great fit. Tony Jefferson and Eric Weddle.
Well, it should be the best pair of safeties in the NFL. Arguably, if you want to go Seattle and their, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor thing.
Right.
But when you add in Ladarius Webb as well behind them, it's definitely the top 3, the best trio of safeties that you can deploy in the NFL.
And I'm all about that versatility. Ladarius Webb, who's been an excellent slot corner through the years, he's shown signs of slowing down at times throughout his career, banged up and all that stuff. But if he's healthy, I do love what they're capable of on the back end. Hopefully, Tavon Young can get back soon as well. But Jalen Hill, I think, has a shot having an excellent preseason. 3 more players I want to run through. Kason Williams with Seattle. Contested catch guy. We talked about him a couple weeks ago. Just keeps making plays over defensive backs. Had a decent career over at Washington. And I don't know. There are enough receivers in Seattle right now. So Kason Williams, I don't know if he's going to see a ton of targets this year, even if he makes the team. But is he a guy that you just kind of stash and say, hey, great preseason, we'll throw you in if we need you.
I think he has to make the team at this point. I mean, the stuff that he's done so far has been fantastic. I think this is your area more than mine, but I think he was a really heavily recruited guy coming out of high school, then suffered a couple of nasty injuries, which really kind of derailed his career. Undrafted free agent at that point. But we're seeing, that talent. If nothing else, so far this preseason, you're seeing a guy with ridiculous talent. Made a phenomenal catch over Xavier Rhodes, who last season was one of the best corners in the NFL, signed a monster cornerback extension this offseason. So when you're making plays, above legitimate guys, not just some guy buried in, number 3 in the depth chart for somebody, you're making contested catch plays down the sideline against one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL. You're 6'3", 215 pounds or whatever he is. That's some serious athleticism to work with as well. And just, an absolute monster when it comes to contested catch stuff, which when your number 1 receiver in Seattle is Doug Baldwin, who, for everything Doug Baldwin does incredibly well, he's not that physical, intimidating, contested catch kind of guy. And the Seahawks, they haven't really had a consistent one of those for a while. They've had a few guys who have threatened to do it every now and again.
Or just randomly break out in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like exactly. Or, kind of reclamation seasons from Big Mike Williams, who then disappears and never to be seen again.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
The big Mike Williams.
The big Mike Williams.
Right, not like the pretty big Mike Williams.
Really big Mike Williams.
Really big, slow
really big Mike Williams. But Case and Williams can be that kind of receiver for them again.
Yeah, I like it. I'm just looking at the depth that they have there as far as names go. Guys that you just expect to make the roster. Not that there's a ton of, huge talent in the way, but they still like Paul Richardson quite a bit, and he's shown flashes. Tyler Lockett, we're high on Tyler Lockett, and when he's been healthy, he's been an excellent player. I think Jermaine Kearse they might be souring on, though, and I don't know if Kearse is a guy that...
Made a couple of plays this week, though.
Yeah, he's just been so inconsistent and up and down. So you have these guys ahead of him on the depth chart. Then there's the great Tanner McAvoy, speaking of contested catch guys, who you tweeted about the other day just before he makes this great touchdown catch.
I love when that happens.
And Amara Darboh, who they drafted in the 3rd round out of Michigan, and I know they're extremely high on. And there were teams around the NFL who were so high on Darboh, like ridiculously high on Darboh compared to the rest of... there were certain teams that were just so ridiculously high on him compared to the rest of the league. I'll say that. They grab him in the 3rd round. I'm pretty sure that they're high on Darboh as well. So I don't know if it's this clean path to the roster, but man, he is having an impressive preseason nonetheless.
Yeah, I think there's definitely competition there, but it's tough to see how you could release a guy after the preseason that he's had. Given, I know the 5-star recruit thing is. It's kind of big in, I think, how teams... It's like the 1st round draft pick thing.
Yeah.
If you've got that in the bank, it buys you an awful lot of slack, with teams to play with in terms of how much you can screw up and how much teams are invested in you, because everybody is chasing talent. If you look at how the NFL operates, everyone chases the ceiling and the potential and what you could become if all the stars align. And if you're 1st round pick, everyone assumes that's what you can be, because nobody wants to come out and admit, we just screwed the analysis up. This guy isn't that good.
Well, they're not wrong. I mean, it's not the wrong way.
Sometimes they are.
No, but it's okay because what you're saying is you're playing for the ceiling. It's diversify your funds. I'm not saying just get a bunch of...
But sometimes you might just be wrong, and a guy doesn't have the ceiling you thought he had.
No, that's true. But chances are, if a guy was a 5-star recruit or a 1st-round pick, there was some level of athletic ability or talent that people think could be cultivated and created into something.
Anyway, but my point is, whether you're the 1st-round pick or you're the 5-star recruit, you've got that in the bank where teams will be willing to chase that talent, be willing to overlook a bunch of other things and say, this is what he can become. So Williams has that going for him, and he's had a phenomenal preseason. He's made a lot of impressive plays. And as much as there's other guys there that have, got something invested in them, I don't think there's anybody there that would stop you keeping Case and Williams on the roster, especially, as I say, because he is that different body type of receiver that they don't really have, a proven stud in. I think there's guys there that can definitely make plays and make an impact on that team, but nobody that does what he does.
And that's what's interesting. Russell Wilson has had success with those types when they've been available, likes to throw the ball down the field and give guys chances to make plays, and Williams has been excellent. Another name, I'm so excited about this one. Washington Redskins center, Chase Rollier. Rollier? Out of Wyoming last year, 6th-round pick. We had him more as a mid-round type of player, if not higher. Top-graded run-blocking guard in the nation 2 years ago in our PFF grades. Moves to center last year. When I'm watching him in the run game, and our colleague Taylor Wright used to coach him at Wyoming. Now PFF analysts used to coach him, so he spoke highly of Chase as well. But when we saw him on tape, I loved him as a pulling guard. I loved his ability to zone block as a center. He made blocks last year at center. You know, we always talk about just like don't lose as an offensive lineman in the run game, which is fair. And there are certain plays where it's like if you just don't lose your block, you're going to be okay. He takes blocks that you're just supposed to, you know, just kind of like stand in the way and be okay and destroys people. Like that's what kept standing out about Rollier. And now he gets a start this past week. He is one of our top graded centers in all of preseason right now at a position that Washington has kind of needed the last couple of years. So I thought when they picked him in the 6th round this year, I thought it was one of the best picks in the draft. He's having a fantastic preseason. Should he be the starting center going into the season?
Yeah, because they have been trying to fill that starting center position for a while now, and nobody has been able to nail it down. In fact, you know, in camp last year, you know, I thought guys that were buried on that depth chart were the best center they had in the team, and they've never really been given the chance to do it. But I think he's absolutely the guy. Didn't allow a sack last year at all through the season. You know, has been playing extremely well in preseason. Why would you not roll with the guy that has played well?
Yeah, we're talking about a run game that still has questions at the running back position. But the offensive line, I know Brandon Scherff has had his struggles a little bit this preseason in pass protection, but the offensive line as a whole has been getting better and better year over year. It seems like they've been looking for a center. Rollier, what value, though, if you can get a 6th-round player to become a starting offensive lineman at any position, but you start him at center, hey, I think they should roll with him. So I'm excited about that one. Keep an eye on him as we head into the season. But one last name I want to bring up, Rico Gathers. Cowboys, tight end, former basketball player. I don't really watch any college hoops anymore at all. There's no time. There's no room in my brain to watch college hoops at all. But he's shown some basketball-like skills on the football field, and teams have had some success with former basketball players. Just before I forget, Austin Ryder was the guy that I thought should be starting for the Redskins last year. Now with the Browns. He's like your Tyrod Taylor of centers. You just find a way to mention him. It's different. Tyrod Taylor was I saw this one play once on a bowl game on TV. This was the I saw this in camp thing. This was the I was there when he looked like the best player on that. This was Bill Polian was there when Landry Jones threw for 500 yards. Therefore, Landry Jones must be good. So I'm a big fan of Austin Ryder. Big fan of a few other guys that I saw play well. It's the same thing though. Washington haven't had a guy that's been playing well at center for years, and every time Ryder was on the field, he actually looked good. In addition to being good, the one day I was there at training camp. So, but they got rid of him. He's now with the Cleveland Browns, so that's not happening. Well, rolling, good pick. But Gathers. His thing is, it's the basketball thing. It's the athletic freak thing. His measurables are insane. He's like, 6'6", 290 or something. It's the you don't have anyone on your team that looks like that. Planet theory. Yeah, exactly. And there is something to that. If you don't have a guy on your defense that can athletically go one-on-one with that, it is a mismatch. It means you have to, by definition, you've got to try and either attack him with somebody that is one-dimensionally better but can't live in the other dimension. Either you've got a defensive back who can live with him athletically but they can't deal with the blocking prowess, or you've got to tackle him with a guy that can dominate him physically but will not be able to run with him. So you either do that or you have to play him with zone. You have to play him with multiple guys. You can try and take him away schematically. But there's definitely something to that planet theory. Not in terms, I think it's less in terms of big uglies and offensive linemen and that kind of thing, but in terms of matchup problem players. Matchups. Yeah, for matchup players for sure. In today's NFL anyway, because you physically can't match up with them. Would you, I saw people talking about this on Twitter, would you just bring in one of these guys every year? 5 of them every year? The payoff is just astronomical if they hit. I mean, if you find an Antonio Gates, the payoff is ridiculous. If you don't, so what? You move on. Definitely. Bring Brock Lesnar in for a tryout. Who cares?
I swear to God, Brock Lesnar could have been a decent NFL player. He just had no interest in spending a year on the practice squad earning peanuts to try and do it.
Right. So it's probably worth the risk. Just bring in those freak athletes and see what happens. It's funny because this is what I'm saying about this whole diversify thing. We're all PFF and production and all that stuff. If you combine grabbing a bunch of guys with really productive PFF grades in college, guys like bring in your Christian Ringos of the world, and then you get your freak athlete upside guys, and you have this really good mix. You just hit on a couple of those upside guys, and you take these productive guys and see if they fit. That's a great way to
Well, look, if you look at what you're doing with a roster, you have 22 starters. You then have a sequence of backups who are the guys that you expect to have to use over the course of the season. So you're essentially getting 44 players that you expect to have some significant playing time over the course of the season. The guys you want to have starting, the guys that if they go down, you need to get somebody else on the field, or you're just, wide receivers, you're going to run 3 or 4 deep anyway because that's just the way the league is.
Special teams.
But,
these guys have to play
yeah,
special teams.
a couple of specialists in there, kicker, punter, whatever. So you're using 46 guys. There's 53 guys that make a roster. So you're dealing with 6-7 extra spots that are bonus spots, that you should, I agree. You should take your 7-8 guys that are your bottom of the roster guys that you're going to be carrying through the season and just say, let's split it down the middle. You pick 4 freak athletes, pick the guy that you think has the highest athletic ceiling you can find. We'll see what we can do with him in terms of coaching, and pick 4 guys that have been phenomenally productive in college, and we'll figure out if they can get that done at the next level. And let's see what sticks out of that group.
I can't wait till we're running a team, Sam. It's going to be great.
That's what I'm saying. You can't get this kind of
when PFF
strategy
has their team in London.
Yeah, it's no good because I'm not over that side of the pond anymore.
Well, we'll all go back. Is Neil automatically the GM? Like, how does that work?
I think Neil's busy. We'll have to take that off him. He can still run the PFF side of things. You and I.
He's not good at managing stuff.
No. You and I will be running the team.
We'll run the team.
Yeah.
Run the day-to-day. Nate's going to be our figurehead general manager.
Yes.
Nathan, we got you. You're going to be our figurehead GM. You're going to handle the media because that's your best role.
But seriously, I think that's a pretty good way of deploying those bottom of the roster guys that if they have to play in the season, you're in trouble anyway. Like if somebody's 50th guy on the roster has to hit a regular season game, things have not gone well. So you might as well use those as a kind of developmental bed to see if you can generate some talent.
This is where I would stash quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Because teams have started going to this 2 quarterback. Oh, we're just going to carry 2. We need that back end roster depth. Why? Do you really need that back end roster depth, or just hold an A.J. McCarron just in case some team thinks he's going to be a second-round pick sometime, and you just start flipping them for second-round picks and third-round picks? Stash your quarterback. So I'd take 4.
4, I like that. My quarterback plan, right? You get your starter. You get your backup.
Good start.
Who's a guy? Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
You get your starter. You get a backup who, you think, Matt Moore. Pick whatever backup you want. Don't have a third guy, right? Don't have your conventional third guy. The aging veteran who you have in there as a meeting room presence, forget that guy.
No, you don't need
if you need that guy, hire him as an assistant. There's hundreds of these guys sitting around that you can't play in the NFL anymore. They're just crying out for a job. Hire him for $50,000 a year as a coaching assistant. If you need a guy that is capable of, mentoring your young quarterback up in the meeting room, just make him the coach. That's all he's doing. You can't put him on the field anyway, so why would you pay him to dress on Sundays and carry a clipboard? It's just ridiculous. Hire that man as a coach. And your third spot,
out of a job.
Your third spot goes yearly to a revolving low-round quarterback and see if he's a guy. See if you strike lucky on a quarterback that nobody else. See if you find a Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
5th, 6th round. And the great thing is, I think in today's NFL, if you find one of those guys, you know it quickly. So I wouldn't even
give him
use
a year or 2.
I wouldn't even do that. I would literally every single year get a new one. And if you strike on that guy, you're going to know it within a year. If you don't, you move on to the next guy. I don't think you need to use that spot as a developmental place to try and bring a young guy along over a few years.
You just kind of know.
Yeah, I think you roll the dice with one of your picks, 5th, 6th round, every single year. And if you strike on a Dak Prescott, you're going to know about it within that year.
I like it. Man, we got the plan here.
We got this GM thing sorted.
Fantasy, we're a little iffy.
Yeah.
Real football, we
nailed that. We just need to find a way of making money out of it.
We just got to find a team to hire us. We got this. Couple other important notes from Week 3 as we wrap it up. Marshawn Lattimore, Saints cornerback, first-round pick, makes his debut, and we've talked a lot about the Saints defense. I think it's one of the bigger storylines of this entire season. Can the defense keep saying creep back to average? Can they get back toward average? The cornerbacks have been terrible. The linebackers have been terrible. They've been so depleted up front other than Cameron Jordan. Lattimore has an excellent debut, knocks down a couple passes. If he stays healthy, how important is he going to be for the Saints defense?
Not actually his debut. I meant to tell you that when you put this on the sheet, but frankly, it's worked out funnier this way anyway. So he did play the week before, didn't play much, but this was the first game of significance. Let's put it that way. Almost a debut. But yeah, did play well. Like Marshawn Lattimore.
That was a stat sheet debut, right?
Yes. Stat sheet debut. There you go. Well saved. He looked really good, made some plays, targeted 4 times, allowed 2 completions for 20 yards, but the 2 completions that didn't get made were both broken up. So that's always good when you're breaking up as many catches as you're allowing over the course of a game. They really need him to be good because they've another team that's been desperate for cornerback help for a while. They got a brief look at what a good corner looks like in Delvin Breaux, and he had that weird season where he played really well despite giving up like 8 touchdowns or whatever it was.
Yeah, but there were still those.
Oh no, it was good and bad.
There was still a lot of bad in there too. But he made a lot of plays on the ball.
Yeah. PJ Williams has actually played well this preseason. Who was a guy that he was a really weird evaluation when I was doing cornerbacks that year, because you know the way we've always talked about how if you catch the wrong games or the right games, you can think a guy is pretty much anything.
Oh, yeah.
He was a guy that the grading didn't like at all, but the first 6 games of his that I watched were all amazing. So for like 6 games, I thought this guy was the best cornerback I'd watched that year.
Right.
And then suddenly all of his bad games came at once. And you're like, oh no. And it was just game after game of horrendous play. And you it's really difficult if you get them in that order to try and figure out what a guy is at the end of that, because you watch 6 games where he looks like an all-pro and 6 games where he looks like he shouldn't be on the field. And then at the end of that, you have to say, okay, now what is he?
He was also the guy that a lot of other scouting reports would say he's a great tackler. And then you look and he missed more tackles than any cornerback in college football that year. So it's like, how are you judging tackling? Does it have to look good? Does it have to sound good? Like, he's got great form when he makes the tackle. He just misses more than anyone else.
He just falls off them a lot.
He's the one who got stiff-armed. He's only missed tackle this preseason. But he did get stiff-armed by Corey Coleman, the video that I posted a few
But he's had 3 strong games this preseason. Against Houston, he only allowed 1 catch on 4 targets, and that 1 catch went for -1 yards. So that's pretty good.
So there's some potential there with New Orleans. I would just say keep an eye on that defense, because you have guys like Sheldon Rankins. You know, can he live up to that first-round hype here in his second season? You have P.J. Williams playing well, Marshawn Lattimore back there. Maybe they can piece together a half-decent defense.
I think there's talent there, and you know they've added guys this draft. We've talked about before how good it was for them. Marcus Williams, Marshawn Lattimore, Anzalone, Trey Hendrickson, all of whom I think played pretty well this week. I think it has the ability to become a very good defense quickly. I think part of that is because it's always looked like a half-decent defense on paper. It's just somehow conspired to play way, way worse than the sum of its parts.
I think it's the dome.
The dome?
It's the dome. Makes them play like a Big 12 defense.
Play soft.
This week, starting quarterbacks have been named. We've touched on these guys plenty over the last few weeks. Let's just roll through them quickly. Tom Savage in Houston. So he's going to start for the Texans over Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson started out okay and then has really tapered off these last couple weeks. I think some of the issues that we thought about Watson have crept up. Listen to the Big Time Throwcast version of the PFF pod for more detailed explanation as to why Watson, I think, is struggling. But what are your thoughts on Savage and what he can do? Because this is a playoff-level defense. Can Savage... can he be the guy for a playoff team?
Yeah, there's a couple of things at work here. One, it's a really low bar for this quarterback job. They're not looking for a quarterback to be phenomenal because they know how good that defense is. They know there's talent around them. They are looking for a quarterback that just won't screw it up. And to be fair to Savage, he hasn't screwed it up in preseason. This was basically his job to lose, or at least until Deshaun Watson looks ready. I don't think either of those two things have happened.
Right.
Savage has done nothing to lose the job this preseason, hasn't thrown an interception, and Deshaun Watson hasn't looked ready to take the job. So, yeah, I think it's the right decision.
I think Savage has looked half decent when. Yeah, is that?
It's a genuinely perfect way of describing it. It's just one of those throwaway turns of phrase, but he has genuinely looked half decent.
Half decent.
Hasn't looked good. Has looked half decent.
Last year in the preseason, last year in the regular season, he's looked half decent, which is much better than. What Osweiler was last year.
It's much better than terrible.
The worst NFL quarterback last season. Deshaun Kizer gets the job in Cleveland. I just want to give you a chance to clear the air, Sam, because Cleveland Brown fans are all over you. You made a tweet. Here's what happened. You ever, just like things get lost in translation?
Yeah.
It was like you tweeted something in a completely different language.
It really was.
You said, I would roll with Cody Kessler. He's not the guy. Just kind of give Kizer some more time. He still looks more ready. Kizer doesn't look ready. I would roll with Kessler.
Yeah.
Which got interpreted as PFF
loves Kessler. Kizer sucks.
Not just Sam. It was PFF loves Kessler. Kessler, they think he's going to the Hall of Fame. Put down your calculators and pocket protectors, you idiots. Kessler sucks. Are you guys watching games? Watch more film. That's what it got interpreted as. I'll let you clear the air because I don't think that's exactly what you said.
No, it isn't. And I like this. I wasn't actually planning on doing this, but I think it's good to, let's just expand the Kessler thing generally, right? I've always been intrigued by Cody Kessler because in 2014, the first year we were grading college, I thought that Kessler was maybe the best quarterback I watched that season. I would qualify that by saying that I thought all quarterbacks that season were terrible. So
that was our first year of college, which Sam had never really watched a ton of college leading.
Oh, Sam has watched college before, but Sam stopped watching college because college football sucks. So Sam stopped watching college because it's bad NFL football. It's like watching. I mean, we talk every year. It comes up, would Alabama, survive against an NFL team? And the consensus is Alabama would get whooped by 40 points by the worst NFL team.
Right.
So if you extrapolate that out across all college football teams, it means the average standard of play is terrible. And you only have to watch 10 minutes of it to see that in action. A guy will drop a ball thrown right to him. A lineman will fall face first on the floor.
Sam, please.
Etc.
Stop trashing college football.
So, college football standard, not great. Quarterback college football standard, not great. So I watched a few games of USC, Cody Kessler, and thought, you know what, this guy actually looks okay. And then there was some bad Cody Kessler came out, and you're like, nah, you know what, I was wrong. But then after doing the whole season, you're like, actually, it turns out they're all like that. So Kessler's back to being one of the best I've seen again.
One of the better guys.
So, and then 2015 happened and everything fell apart at USC.
It was very disappointing.
He didn't take the step forward you expect from a guy going through his college career. Took a step backwards. Everything fell apart at USC. Didn't show the same poise under pressure. Didn't look anything like the same player. And that confused me because I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. If you see the good season at the end of a guy's career, you can think, okay, he's taken a step forward. There'll be another step forward up to the NFL. There's progression there. If you see a guy take a step back against lesser competition
in college, right?
Yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? It's just confusing. Then the Browns drafted him higher than most people had him projected. Right. He was 5th, 6th round pick in a lot of people's eyes. The Browns took him in the 3rd. He got playing time last year when he wasn't really supposed to. Didn't look bad in the playing time. Part of the thing is he went 0-9 or whatever it was. So the people that use QB wins as a thing are like, well, he sucks. He lost every single game. He was never going to be anything. But if you look at what he did, he played okay in those games. There were some problems. I'm not saying the guy was phenomenal. He definitely held the ball way too long.
That's my issue with him. He's a guy that's supposed to be on that Alex Smith.
And if you're going to do that, you need to get rid of the ball quickly.
You got to be a quick hitting, because he's very accurate.
Yes.
This is the thing that gives him a chance. He's very accurate.
Yeah.
He has a bad arm. I mean, he has a bad arm. But that's what intrigued me about him. When you have a guy, to me, the accuracy is the unteachable thing.
Yeah.
People have it reversed. The arm is not the unteachable.
I think they're both kind of unteachable.
But look, we've seen other guys improve their arm strength to serviceable, to even good. So I was intrigued by, could he at least do that? Because the accuracy, how many guys have improved their accuracy through the years? How many big-armed guys
Not
have
in a big way. I think it's the same thing. If you have you can have non-viable arms and you can have non-viable accuracy. I don't think you can fix either one of them.
Well, anytime a guy has...
I think you can improve either side, but you're not going to go from one extreme, you're not going to go from that is not viable to that's now workable.
Right. Well, either way, I thought the accuracy at least gave him a shot.
Yeah.
He's got to be a little bit quicker in the pocket, all that stuff. I understand Cleveland Browns fans, though, saying, okay, we don't want to roll with Kessler because the upside's not there. He's never going to be the special throw guy. Like, he's limited, right?
And I agree. And I think that's the thing. So what I said is that DeShone Kizer I don't think is ready. And if he's not ready, you're not going to start Osweiler because why would you keep him on the roster at that kind of money? Get rid of him. Keep Kizer developing on the bench until he's ready and put Kessler out there. He's not done anything to lose a job in the time he's had playing, and he's only going to be a stopgap until Kaiser's ready anyway.
And back to our strategy of building a team. What if Kessler rolls out there and has 5 good games? If he just accidentally has 5 good games, you start flipping him for 12 first-rounders. That's how it goes in the NFL. So just in case that happens.
And the thing is, right, I get this flurry of stuff back. Are like, did you even watch the game? His stats are not an indication of how he played in this game. And you're like, well, okay, maybe I need to watch this again. So I went back and looked at every single throw Kizer made in that game again. And I'm like, are we looking at the same stuff? He threw 1 interception. Okay, that's a bad play. It wasn't a good play. There's no, mitigating circumstances of that interception. It was a bad decision. It wasn't off the hands of his receivers and into the linebacker or something. It was a legitimate bad decision that got picked off.
Right.
He should have thrown a second one. He threw it straight to a cornerback on a comeback that was dropped. So that should have been 2 interceptions. I agree that the stat line was not necessarily
6 for 18
accurate because there were some drop passes in there. Right. There were some ugly conditions in there. But there was also a second interception in there that wasn't picked off by the defensive back that had it in his hands. With Kizer, I get it. Look, you're the Browns. You've had this who's who of misery at the quarterback position for more than a decade at this point, more than almost 2 decades. You're just sick of it. You're looking for anybody that shows a glimmer of hope. And what was it, the second play of that game? Kizer showed more than a glimmer of hope.
Oh, it was unbelievable.
He made one of the plays of the preseason. Got himself out of trouble, found Corey Coleman streaking down the sideline, not just hit him, but landed the ball over a defensive back and only where Coleman can make a play. It was a phenomenal play, but that's never been Kaiser's problem. The upside has never been Kaiser's problem. It's how often he hits that upside and what happens in between those plays of upside. And that was still there in this game. So until you're going to say, you can have that stuff, you can have the good stuff, the stuff that you all desperately want to see, that Cody Kessler is not capable of doing. I'm perfectly happy to admit that. You can have that without having the 2 interceptions that come between those plays. Until you can have that, I don't think that he's ready to play.
I can't believe you fitted Cody Kessler for the yellow jacket.
Yeah.
And now you're backing
Hall of Famer.
What you said. Just to sum it up, the DeShone Kizer scouting report from the draft guide last year says he makes the easy stuff look difficult and the difficult stuff look easy.
Perfect.
And I think that the preseason has shown that. The special plays have been there, but there have been some easy plays that he has made look difficult. The one last part of that I'm going to go for before I let you have your last part is I think they're in a similar situation to Houston in terms of it's not a high bar for the quarterback to achieve. You don't need a quarterback that can be Aaron Rodgers. You don't need the guy that can make the highlight reel plays every single down. Cody Kessler can do a job, especially when you've improved the offensive line. You've improved the receivers around him. You've improved everything that was around him last year, including the defense. So, you can't look at this and say, well, he went 0-9 last year, therefore they can't win any games with him. Everything around him has gotten better. So if you put Kessler out there, it should be a dramatically better team. And that's even if he hasn't gotten any better. Right.
Than it would have been last year. And then you put in Kizer whenever he's ready.
Yeah, and you have to find out what you have in Kizer at some point.
Yeah.
I keep coming back to they're in the QB market next year too.
Yeah.
Unless Kizer does look like a superstar. The one last guy, Blake Bortles, named the starter in Jacksonville.
That didn't last long.
Well, as poorly as Blake Bortles played last year, the alternative is Chad Henne. We talked about maybe Brandon Allen gets a shot. If you take Brandon Allen out of it, there's no reason why Chad Henne should be starting over Blake Bortles. Henne did not look great against Tampa Bay. He hit 2 throws. He had 2 really nice deep balls. They were great. One was dropped, one was caught. Other than that, it was check downs and missing throws. And look, you just have to hope that Bortles can summon a little bit of 2015 magic. As ugly as his play has looked at times here in the preseason and last year, you have to run with Bortles over Henne if you're saying that Brandon Allen's not in the mix.
Honestly, I don't think that was even a live quarterback competition. I think Doug Marrone was just so pissed off with how everything played in that game that he just went, at the end of the game, it's like, look, you guys, everybody sucked. The starters sucked, the backup sucked. I just want somebody to come in here
I'm good with that,
and lead this team. I think that's what it was. It's not a case of this was a live quarterback competition for a week and it's been conclusively won by Blake Bortles. I think he just was frustrated as crap at the end of one of those games, said, look, this is an open competition. I need somebody to step up and show me they deserve this job. And then after a week, he's just gone, you know what, there is no real viable alternative to starting Blake Bortles this season.
I'm good with that. A lot of times people are very sensitive when you open up quarterback competitions. What if it hurts the feelings of your quarterback? But if he's going to be your franchise quarterback, he should probably be able to handle a little adversity, don't you think?
I do think, though, that what we said last week about Brandon Allen is probably legit. I think he may be the best quarterback on this roster. And if Bortles does not improve, if he goes through this entire season the same level he's playing now, for a start, the Jags are in trouble. But that means there should be a cutoff point during the season where you say,
Brandon Allen's in.
Bortles, sit yourself on the bench. We're going to give Brandon Allen the rest of the season and see what we have. Because again, like the Browns, they are going to be back in the quarterback market. And like this preseason, there is no point to putting Chad Henne out there. There just isn't any.
No point.
You know what he is. You know what he's not going to be able to do for you. Let's just see what Brandon Allen has.
Chad Henne's the guy that you want to hire as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no point in having him on the field, and if you need him as a veteran presence to mentor the young guys, hire him as a coach.
Hire him as a coach. Sam is changing the way the NFL is going to...
revamping the GM spectrum.
Is going to handle their backup quarterback situation. That'll do it for us today on the PFF podcast. Be sure to stay with us all week. And next week, we are cranking out these podcasts. We want to know what you guys think of it. Hit us up. I'm at PFF_Steve on Twitter. Sam is at PFF_Sam. Don't forget about our fun sponsors that we mentioned at the beginning and middle of the podcast. And also don't forget about PFF Edge and PFF Elite, our two brand new products. We consolidated everything for you guys. We have all these different products rolled into two, just Edge and Elite. And you have a chance to get PFF Edge for free when you make your first deposit at either DraftKings or FanDuel. Both of those offers are at profootballfocus.com/DraftKings17 and profootballfocus.com/FanDuel17. So be sure to check those out. We're also going to give away Elite for free, once again, for a 5-star review. All you have to do is leave that 5-star review on iTunes, leave an email or a Twitter handle so we can get in touch with you, and we'll take one lucky winner to win PFF Elite, a $200 value filled with our signature stats, award-winning fantasy football analysis. Everything is rolled right into PFF Elite. Last week we did have a winner, Mr. James P. Mack. Is that how I'm reading it? At James P. Mack on the Twitter machine. He won a free PFF Elite, so he's going to win all of his fantasy leagues this year, all because he left a 5-star review, and he won last week. That can be you next week as we draw another lucky winner. Thanks again, guys, for listening, and we'll talk next time.